Hey friends, I hope your week is off to a great start. Today I'm going to be trying out Claire and Christina's recipe for squash and radicchio salad with pecans from the BA series Making Perfect. So I do these Bon Appetit recipe tests every single Wednesday. If you like this one, please be sure to give me a big thumbs up and click subscribe. So this recipe is all about the squash, so let's talk about that for just a minute. So BA is recommending 6 of these honeynut squash. So these can be a little bit challenging to find, and if you can't find them, you can substitute with delicata. Now, delicata obviously come in a variety of sizes, and they're much larger than the honeynut squash. So in total, what you need is 1 kilogram, 2.2 pounds of squash. So however you get there is totally fine, but that's the weight that you're looking for. Now, prepping squash can be a little bit intimidating just because the exterior is a bit hard. So let's walk through how to do that right now. So you want to lay your squash down. You're going to go in with the knife in the middle, and it's easy to go in tip first, rock and cut halfway through, rotate the squash around, and then you can meet kind of up with your other cut. So that's what you're looking for. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. And this is just like a butternut squash inside, right? So you've got the kind of the meaty end and then this bulb end that has all the seeds. And so I'm going to go ahead and just spoon the seeds out into my garbage bowl. And this is just like cleaning out a pumpkin. So it's really easy. And so that's what the inside of this looks like. All right, now for the delicata squash, let's cut into this one and see how it's different. So I'm going in tip first, rocking backward, cutting through, and then meeting up with myself. It's a little bit more seed and a little bit more of the kind of stringy bits here in the center, but it's basically the same idea. All right, so this big guy here, it's the same idea, just on a different scale. Lots of seeds in here too. So these honeynut squash are super cute, and if you're wanting to do something else with them aside from just roast them plain, my very first video here was actually a Hasselback butternut squash that Carla did, and it used a full-size butternut squash, but I think it would be really cute to use these honeynut squash, and that way when you're serving, everyone would get a whole little baby squash on their plate, and I think it would be kind of a fun, festive presentation. So we've got the squash all cleaned out. Now we're just going to slice these up into some half moons. So you'll notice we're not peeling the squash here. A couple things on that. So firstly, obviously you want to wash the skin very well. I used my normal vegetable and fruit wash. The second thing is don't worry about the skin being hard. While this bakes, the skin will soften up a lot. So I'm cutting off the tip, then I'm cutting off the butt end, and then we want it to be inch-wide slices. However, I think that's not going to divide evenly here, so I'm just going to go for 4 slices. So it's not perfectly an inch, but at least they're all even, and that's really what we're going for, is even slices so that everything cooks evenly. So I've got the big bowl of sliced squash here. I've got a 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil. I'm going to drizzle this over the top, and then we're going to season with just salt and pepper and give this a toss to get everything combined. I'm going to be pretty liberal with my pepper application. I've got some kosher salt. This is Diamond Crystal brand. I'm going to do a 2-finger pinch. So you can see why using a large bowl is important here. It gives you room to toss the squash around. I've got my rimmed baking trays that preheated in the oven to 450. So these are screaming hot right now, and we're going to divide the squash evenly between the 2 trays. So obviously be very careful with your fingers here. Try to get the flat sides down. So these are half sheet pans. I've got more than enough room to really generously space out my pieces. You don't want to crowd your sheet tray. If the sheet tray is too crowded, you're going to end up actually steaming the squash. And we're going to put these into the oven now. So I'm putting one in the bottom and then one in the middle of the oven, and we'll rotate halfway through. So while we've got the squash in the oven roasting, we can go ahead and move on to prepping the dressing. So first up, we've got to toast some pecans. I've got raw pecans here. It's important to buy raw. If you buy roasted, this process that we're doing has already been done, so you'll be burning the pecans. So buy raw pecans. If you can't find it, raw walnuts would be a great substitute. So we need 1 cup total here. Got a teaspoon of olive oil going in here. And nuts have oil of their own. Tossing them in olive oil, I think, just kind of helps the crisping and the toasting process happen a bit more rapidly. You can be rough if you want to. We're going to chop these up when we're done toasting anyhow, so if they break, that's fine. So these are looking nicely coated, so I'm spreading these out in a single even layer so that everything toasts evenly. And we'll pop this into the oven. All right, so the squash are just about at the halfway point, so we're going to switch the trays. So we are rotating top to bottom and front to back. These are sizzling away here. All right, so the recipe didn't say to do this, but I'm going to because I think it needs to be done. I am flipping the squash over here to get the non-roasted side down. I think I've already got some nice color on the side that's been touching the pan for that first 10 minutes. So I don't want that to burn, and I want to get the nice golden color on both sides. So this looks really great to me so far. And the pecans are smelling really fragrant, so I'm tossing, spend about 5 minutes. The recipe said 8 to 10, toss halfway. Tossing nuts is always a challenge because you can't really tell what was up and what was down. They're all brown. Just get them moving around a bit. I think that looks great. You can go back on there, back in the oven. All right, so the pecans were in the oven for a full 10 minutes. They're very fragrant, but they're not burned. So I think this is what we're looking for. I'm just gonna set these aside so that they can completely cool before we chop them up. So while the nuts cool and the squash finished roasting, we can move on to making the dressing. So the dressing is basically just a vinaigrette, and we're gonna make it in the blender, so it comes together really easily. All right, so we need half of a small shallot. So if you haven't used shallots before, it's just basically an onion, and there are lobes inside. Sometimes it'll be one thing, sometimes there'll be 3 lobes, whatever. So it said half of a small shallot. I like shallot, so I'm gonna use this bigger half. And it says that we're finely chopping this. So the way that I always chop an onion is by making vertical cuts the length of the onion. And this gives us a nice and quick kind of small chop. I'm gonna pop this into my blender jug. So I've got a pretty good sized lemon here, just giving it a quick roll on the counter to loosen up those juices. All right, so into the blender jug this goes. Need 2 tablespoons of orange juice. And before I dirty my tablespoon, I'm gonna go into my jar of Dijon. Trying to save on dishes here. So we need 2 tablespoons of Dijon. I've got this Grey Poupon that's the country style, that's the stone ground. So it's a bit coarse. So use whatever mustard you like. Now we need 2 tablespoons of fresh orange juice. A little more, I'm just gonna go wild though. 4 teaspoons of pure maple syrup. And that's the timer for the squash. So we're multitasking here a little bit. Oh, wow. Okay. So these look nice and sizzly. You can see these squash got a little bit more color on them on that initial side. Plus I think these look beautiful. So I'm gonna let them just cool down. So we're gonna coarsely chop the pecans and reserve a half cup for serving at the end. So I'm just gonna pass the knife through these. So I'm gonna scoot in here, get my half cup reserved. And the rest of this can go into the blender jug. So I'm just going on low speed. All right. Yeah, that looks great. So it looks kind of like a rustic peanut butter almost. So now with the blender running, we're gonna stream in that oil. You can actually hear that the texture in the blender is changing. It sounds like it's getting a little bit more viscous. If I were Chris Morocco, I'd have spoons in my pocket. So I'm gonna go in here, give it a little taste. Okay. Going with a small pinch of salt. The flavor that's really nice though, you can definitely taste the mustard in a good way. I love black pepper, so I tend to go a little bit heavy on that. If that's not your style, don't do that. Pop this back on. Okay. Perfect. So we're almost to the assembly portion. The last thing we need to do is cut up our Asian pear. We only need half of this. So I think what I'm gonna do is just quarter this, and then that way it'll give me access to that tougher core. There's a little bit of a color and a texture variance, so in person you'll be able to tell exactly what's going on here. And then we're thinly slicing this. So into the lemon juice, I'm gonna toss these around a little bit, just kind of make sure that they get coated on both sides. If you have extra lemon juice in your bowl, it's okay, because we're not going to pour this. We're going to pick these out and place them into the salad. So use as much lemon juice as you need to get everything evenly coated. So next up, we've got the salad greens. So rather than greens, we've actually got radicchio here. So 2 small heads is what the recipe calls for. So we're just ripping these off. So this is more than I would want to bite. So I think I'm just going to rip it down the middle. And I think that this will look nice. So the nice thing about the radicchio is that it's a really hearty kind of salad base that's not going to get all wilty. So, you know, you serve a big salad on Thanksgiving or for a dinner party, and you've got leftovers. If you dress that salad when you put it on the table, it's going to be all wilted and gross, and it's not going to keep well. Radicchio, like cabbages, is very sturdy and will hold up well to the dressing. I'm obviously not going to eat this entire salad myself, so I will have leftovers, and I'll report back letting you know whether this held up for a couple days or if it was a mess the next day. Perfect. So we've got our giant bowl filled with radicchio, and we're going to add half of the dressing approximately to the radicchio. Nice So I've got a big bowl, obviously. If it were wider, that might be easier to accommodate this tossing. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. And I think with all of the toppings on this salad, a big plate like this is probably better than a bowl. Some salads look really nice when they're very vertical and kind of built upward. However, this one has so many toppings that I think doing a wide platter like this is a little bit more party service friendly. Nice. These squash have cooled down, so popping these into my bowl. They're not fully cool, but they're basically room temperature at this point. I'm taking the remainder of the dressing. This one I will mix with the spatula, kind of just trying to get everything evenly coated. So this is a really generous amount of dressing, and then we're just arranging these squash bits on the top. Like the delicata, you can see how pretty the skin is there. So I have those peeking up. So now I'm going to go in with the Asian pear. God, you guys, this is so much topping. If you're one of those people who is all about salad toppings, this is really right up your alley. All right, next up, so we need a 1/4 cup of parsley leaves. So that's a 1/4 cup of packed parsley. We'll see how it looks if it seems like it's too much. Yeah, I think that looks nice. I really like that. Okay, parsley done. Here's our reserved pecans. Do you say pecan or pecan? I never know which is the preferred pronunciation. I'm a pecan person. I don't know if it's regional. So let me know in the comments below whether you're team pecan or pecan, and let me know where you live. And that way maybe we can put together a spreadsheet or something and figure out who says it which way. That looks super. So the recipe called for piave. I could not find that at my grocery store, so I've got some really nice imported Parmigiano Reggiano. If you can't find Parmigiano Reggiano, you could use domestic Parmesan. Really any just like hard, salty cheese would work well here. And we need 3 ounces of it total, so I need 1/3 of this block. And I'm just gonna eyeball it. And here's the finished squash and radicchio salad with pecans from BA's Making Perfect Thanksgiving episode. This looks absolutely fantastic and I am dying to dig into it. So this is a fully loaded bite. It's got everything accounted for. Wow. Really well seasoned. Nice combination of flavors and textures. The radicchio is really standing up. It's still got that bite to it. The squash is super tender and kind of melts in your mouth and gives this kind of creamy quality to the mouthfeel. So that's really nice. Overall, I'm super happy with this salad. The flavor and combination of textures is perfect. Plus, the presentation is a total wow. I really hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, please be sure to give me a big thumbs up and click subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.